I have learned a lot about business models. And so I also, my background is business. I have an MBA. And so I've always been more on the analytical side of things. And I think a lot of people come into it because they like working for themselves. They want the freedom. They want to be able to kind of be their own boss. But the reality is that somebody's always your boss. Your client is your boss. And, you have to have a business model that works for you. And so I would say from the very beginning, imagine that you're a big company. Don't imagine that you're a small company. Imagine that you're a big company and build systems that will grow with you. And that was something I learned from really going through the trials and tribulations of building a startup.
Welcome to the Spiro Podcast, managing your real estate photography and videography business. With your hosts, Todd Kivimaki and Craig Magrum.
Well, welcome to the Spiro Podcast, managing your real estate photography and videography business. Spiro is a software platform really designed to help you manage, scale, and grow your real estate media business. I'm Craig Magrum. I'm the business development and client care specialist for Spiro and host of the podcast. And along with me every week, of course, our owner and founder and co-host of the podcast, Todd Kivimaki.
Hey, Craig, it's great to be here. That seems so official, owner and founder. I mean, just, when you do this, I'm a normal rambling self today, Craig.
You got to give credit where credit's due, right?
Well, I didn't have a child up all night last night, so this is my self-conscious thing, but my bags are not so bad today for those of you on YouTube. So I did get some sleep last night.
Did you have coffee? There's the important question.
Plenty of coffee, but I water it down because it gets to be too much.
Well, what's the point then? Anyway,
it's a habit.
We're already off. Yeah. We're already off on a rabbit trail. Anyway, so last week we had a great podcast. We did a PMRE speaker recap and had Devin Pastorius join us, and just a great presentation. And we wanted to hit another one because we really enjoyed this presentation as well. And I'm going to let you introduce our guest, Todd, but that event was just a great time of networking, of learning, conversation. It was kind of like therapy for those of us working in real estate media because we feel alone a lot of times. But yeah, just really enjoyed it. We're definitely planning on being back.
Yeah, we are. It was a fabulous conference. For those of you that don't know about it, it's PMRE. That's Photo Media for Real Estate. If you search PMRE conference, you'll find out about it. And it's coming up again. I think they're doing it in the same month. So that was November of 23. So be sure to hop on there. Today, I'm super excited. So this presentation just really caught me and just got me thinking and had a ton of information. And we also found out that she's just a fabulous individual. Got to spend some time with her. She was kind of disguised in these heart glasses the night of there was a band the night of. And then all of a sudden, Craig, Nick, and I were there talking like, oh, it's Emily. And then so we hit it off and then we got to do a cool VR thing in Vegas, but I won't give too much away. Our special guest, I'm extremely excited to bring to the podcast today is Emily Olman with Hopscotch Interactive. And she was one of the speakers at PMRE, and you will not want to miss this. You'll want to listen to this again and take notes when you go home. Emily, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Todd, and thank you, Craig. I'm so happy to be here, but I think that it would be, a shame to just even launch right into who I am. I would just want to say, the Spiro team was so fabulous. You guys welcomed me at the PMRE conference, and yeah, maybe I had my glasses on and, and whatnot. But, for me, it's, I want to make sure people know that I'm a photographer. I do exactly what they do. I am day in, day out, like moving the garbage cans. I'm working with my editors. I'm doing the sky replacements. I'm like fixing the little leaves on the stairs. I actually live and breathe this all the time. But I also have had one foot in immersive media and sort of future looking and forward looking things for a long time as well. So yeah, I guess you could say I straddle both worlds.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we really did appreciate you stopping by the booth. All of you speakers were just incredibly welcoming, and you made us, as first-time attendees, you made us feel very welcome, and we appreciate the fact that you took the time to stop and say hi and engage in conversation with us.
Oh yeah, you guys are great. You guys are great. It's a pleasure, and it's nice to catch up with you again a couple weeks later, and to get maybe a little bit deeper. You can ask some more questions. We can talk about anything you like.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
We are excited. I have some questions. But before we get to that, Emily, do you want to give us a little background? I think every photographer can resonate with just the story of what was it? Did you sell a house? Mm-hmm. Did you look at what brought you into real estate media and then immersive media as well?
So my story is, I'm guessing similar to other people's. What happened was in 2015, I was working, well, this part may be dissimilar, but I was working with friends on a startup for a property management product. And it was a friend of mine who started the company. And as part of the founding team, we were evaluating 360 cameras and, in fact, Matterport as well. And so we wanted to use, I know now that we were early for this, but we wanted to use our 360 content, our 3D content. And this was before you could really use machine learning or AI, or for example, to kind of scrape the data from a scene and, have a semantic understanding of it. So, be able to recognize what is in the scene. That wasn't possible at the time, but we wanted to use these cameras to basically learn about properties and analyze them, and then hopefully help landlords, help tenants become, more efficient at doing things like ordering an HVAC repair, or, going in as a group on buying, heaters or whatever it was, anything that would sort of facilitate a better management of a property. And so I got my hands on the Matterport camera while I was there in the early days with the team. And I just really loved it. I thought it was amazing. And then, long story short, my mother-in-law was going to sell a property. She had a property to sell, and I saw that the listing agent was not going to do a virtual tour. And I was pretty sure that by adding a Matterport scan, that we could tell a better story about this property. And so I told the realtor, I used a camera. I borrowed it from my friend, my colleague, and I was like, hey, can I use this camera to work, to create a tour for our house? And I said, he said yes. And I made the tour, and this was like so early, like there were no 360 panos outside. It was just the house. But the house hit the market, and then the realtor started getting like call after call of who did this? What is this? We've never seen this before. This was 2015. And so I was talking to the realtor, and she's like, do you do this? And I said, well, yes, I do. So I launched the business actually really through what I would call just like, a product market fit and a demand. And I had no intention of actually at that time, I didn't come into this as a photographer, and I came into it as an entrepreneur, and I came into it as somebody interested in technology and wanting to do something myself and be very hands-on as a creator. And I had no idea that it would turn into virtual reality, augmented reality, that it would turn into, I would be creating floor plans, running an agency, all of these things. But I've always had a very entrepreneurial spirit. And I also felt like it was a good time in my life to start my own company. And so, yeah, those were sort of the baby steps of what has led to now, building an agency. And now we're several years in, we're starting our 8th year.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. You said 2015, you were doing Matterport. I started my business in 2017 in the Toledo, Ohio market, and professional photography was kind of starting there, and video tours were unheard of. So the fact that, you were doing Matterport that early, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
before we dive into what you shared with us at PMRE, you talked a lot about the fact that you're an entrepreneur and you have that spirit. I'm guessing that we have a number of listeners and viewers that have either just started their own business or are thinking about it because they are interested in the area of real estate media. What would you tell them if you give them one piece of advice about being an entrepreneur in this field? What would that be?
Well, I have learned a lot about business models. And so I also, my background is business. I have an MBA. And so I've always been more on the analytical side of things. And I think a lot of people come into it because they like working for themselves. They want the freedom. They want to be able to kind of be their own boss. But the reality is that somebody's always your boss. Your client is your boss. And, you have to have a business model that works for you. And so I would say from the very beginning, imagine that you're a big company. Don't imagine that you're a small company. Imagine that you're a big company and build systems that will grow with you. And that was something I learned from really going through the trials and tribulations of building a startup. And my CTO at the time was a real believer in that. And I really felt like that bit of information helped me so much with Hopscotch Interactive because I separated my personal checking from my business checking. So I registered the business. I created at the very beginning, it was like, I created an LLC or maybe not, LLC came later, but I started at least with, wanting to have this sole proprietorship be an entity. That was very important to me. And so if you're starting out and you haven't gotten a handle on your business model and at least done some really hard thinking about what you want it to be, like, do you want it to be a lifestyle business? Do you want this to be a side hustle? Do you want this to be something big and scalable like what you guys are doing? And I think that will inform the direction people take.
Well, it's interesting that I love how technology can solve problems and just even hearing your story, Emily, it's like I did that same thing. A realtor asked, and it wasn't about Matterport, it was about, I was only doing video at the time, and a realtor said, "Oh, you offer photos as well?" And I said, "Of course I do." And it's just, I don't know. It's just like entrepreneurial butterflies that come back up. And it's like, it's so cool how someone can have a need and especially with technology, we can help them with that need. I don't know if that resonates with you, or it sounds like that's kind of what hit it off in your story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was certainly that I like photography. I love the creative process. I was not a photographer. In fact, I had a hard time saying I was a photographer in the beginning because, I think I had a little bit of imposter syndrome where I was like, yeah, I do photos, but I don't even feel like I should charge you for them, And then I look at us now, and honestly, like, it was realizing that the core of the business was going to be around the photos. And I said this at PMRE, the core of the business around the photos. You have to have photos to have a listing go live. So make that your focal point, make that your, killer app, make that the best thing that you offer. Everything else is like, even if you do Matterport, you can be great at Matterport, but spend 10 years doing Matterport, you'll know some more tricks, but your ability to get better at that, at least, I mean, it's a complicated thing, but because there's so many other ways you can use Matterport now, but I would say you and I are similar Matterport photographers, but we may be vastly different real estate photographers. So I think your core, your business is going to be focused on what people have to have. And then it's your job as a salesperson to be able to package that up with the things that they might also like to have. And so it's knowing your market, and it's also figuring out if you're going to be doing something that's the same as everyone else, or do you want to differentiate in any way? And there's a lot, and Todd, you would probably agree with this. You can differentiate on systems. You can differentiate on customer experience. You can differentiate on creative. We have in our market, for example, I think in the beginning, one of our ways that we really differentiated was more of a boutique experience for our clients. So a more white glove experience where the clients feel like they have almost like a boutique agency on their team. And that really worked to position us well for luxury clients. But in the beginning, it wasn't like that. Like I've done every single kind of shoot you could imagine, like everything from arson to, somebody died in the bedroom, or like, I mean, it's literally like I've seen everything. I've seen it all. Yeah. But it's like, you learn from all those experiences, and it all kind of helps you at some point down the road.
For sure.
Yeah. It all helps to focus. You need a little bit of it. And Devin spoke to this last week and at his presentation as well, but you really have to master it, and you have to decide what it is. And beginning, you'll probably try a little bit at everything, because you might have a shiny object syndrome where somebody ask about something, and it's good to take those, if you didn't take it one step further, Emily, and say, well, we should really have a 360 tour on is your mother's house or mother-in-law's house. Like if you didn't say that, if you didn't ask that question, then who knows what you would be doing right now. So I think you'll follow some of those shiny objects, but eventually you got to just pick a couple of them and say, this is who we are.
Yeah, that was hard in the beginning because you don't know and if we're still talking about people just starting out, they maybe are still figuring out what they're going to be, and they have a lot of options. There's so many types of media, and so it can be very overwhelming, and you have a small sample size. So if you've only done a few shoots, you're going to have sometimes you may get a negative feedback on something, which is only negative because you've only done it like 2 or 3 times. But if you do it 25 times, do it 30 times, you're going to be great at it, and you're going to get different feedback from different people. So I think that the lesson is don't be discouraged if it doesn't go the way you think it's supposed to work. And like, you have to keep trying. And I would never, at this point in my career, I would say, let's keep trying. Because if I have a hunch on something, and that's, again, comes back to building a company and thinking about, always trying to find ways to differentiate. It's like, you're probably right on that hunch. You may just be wrong on timing, or you might be wrong on the audience, but you can get insights into your business by experimentation. So, yeah.
Really good advice. Really good advice.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've talked a lot about technology already, and the presentation that you made at PMRE, I think was something that for many of us, it was fairly advanced and definitely cutting edge. You introduced us into a deeper dive into the metaverse and NFTs. So do you mind sharing what is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that one of the goals around the introduction of the metaverse for real estate it's interesting because this is something I've been tracking since 2015. So when I got my first Matterport camera, that same year, Matterport launched their showcase app on the Gear VR. And so they had a partnership with Samsung and with Oculus. And so Matterport was available as an app. And I was a very early adopter of that. And so, I should also sort of preface this with, I worked in the gaming industry and I worked in the advertising industry and in Japanese anime.
Really?
So my early career was video games for the video game industry, working for a suite of magazines like Official US PlayStation Magazine, Computer Gaming World, Electronic Gaming Monthly, and I was selling advertising. And so it was print advertising, right? And then I moved from that into the anime industry, and I worked on we launched the Anime Network on demand. I worked for New Type USA magazine, and I was always selling advertising packages. And so I've often thought about the behavior of an audience when they love something or when they are experiencing the media. In fact, one of the magazines that I was working for, it came with a DVD. And so the magazine had a DVD every month. It was a very expensive magazine at the time. It was like, I think $13.99. It was pricey, right? And but I always saw value in media and telling a story. And so I guess it was like when I first tried the VR experience with it wasn't even Matterport at first. It was, you know, it was very big in the Bay Area. So I had the advantage of being in the Bay Area. When I tried that, I was like, oh my God, this is such an amazing medium. And I felt like it was just pure connection with what I was seeing. And so I felt like it was an incredible medium for marketing and for sharing space and places. And I know that, you know, a lot of people nowadays are talking about the metaverse. And I felt like, yeah, like I needed to demystify that a bit, because we're really just talking about the internet. And if we're talking about the future internet, we're talking about, well, if I have content coming to me on a website or a web page, and if I can maybe put, you know, go to that web page, and then I can use 3D, or sorry, not 3D, use goggles or a head-mounted display or glasses to get a deeper experience of that content, or maybe use that web page to launch something into augmented reality, which is the overlay of digital media on the real world. Like most people think of like Pokemon Go, which is, you know, here's the mobile phone, and then here are the Pokemon that you're chasing after. It's an easy example to use. But I was like, this is where this is all heading. And it was very interesting because Matterport just happened to be the first end-to-end camera system where I could shoot in Matterport, and then I could port those models. At the time, they were all done by hand, but I could port those into virtual reality. And so I was so excited about it, guys. Like that completely put me down this path of wanting to see, like, well, if we can do this, what else can we do?
Mm-hmm. Did you have that same response? What did your clients, you know, that you opened up a new kind of world, if you will. What did your clients at the time say?
It's so interesting because they were interested in it. And I think Matterport was pretty early. It's so funny. Like my first client, and this is again, when I go back to like small sample size, my first client, you guys will not believe this, but the first client that was so into it was a cemetery and mausoleum, because they wanted to have a virtual tour where people wouldn't have to leave their homes, and they could go make a decision about a place for their loved one or for themselves from being at home. And so that was like the very first, you know, like big paid project that I did in VR, was working on something like that, which I was like, this is a great use case for it. But then, you know, I couldn't sell that in to subsequent clients because it was just way too technically advanced for them.
How often do you find that people engage in 3D content or the metaverse on, say, a flat panel screen versus a head mounted like Oculus or Google glasses? Or I see there's so much I don't know about this still.
Yeah.
But what's the practical use of it right now in real estate media?
So the practical use of it, I would say, well, right now, also the price of the, if you want to talk headsets, the price of the headsets have come down significantly. And so most of the time that I'm doing it, I'm using either the Quest, the Quest 2 from Meta, or we're working on a project right now with Magic Leap, which is a mixed reality headset. And so the differences in the uses for us are that with a headset, like a fully immersive headset, is you can use it basically for Matterport. You can use it to, go into apps and to look around and do configurator experiences. But I think it's cool for Matterport, because even though you're at this point, like, they changed the way that they do it. So you're really just going from pano to pano. You're not walking around a space, but you can use the controller to teleport and to move around. I still think that it's possible to have a good experience with it. But the majority of, I would say, real estate / design is happening more in the unbuilt environment. So architects are using it. People are using it for planning as a virtual showroom. And that would be like the majority of the work that's done is showing that stuff. But I mean, what we're going to do in this upcoming project is using the Magic Leap for visualization. And so showing like a build out, a hypothetical build out of a suite. And that was what I was doing at the startup that I had a few years ago. You know, we're just doing it now with the next generation of hardware.
Gotcha. So I could see builders using this quite a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Got it.
So it's good for that. It's good for collaboration. It's like when you get into the architecture, engineering, construction use cases, then it goes beyond real estate, and it really gets into everything from, like, you know, remote assistance. Like if you're using a Microsoft HoloLens, which is one of the devices, it has remote assistance. You can, you know, have an expert basically see what you're doing with your hands free. And the whole idea is having hands-free ability to fix something or to show something. It's for safety reasons. And then also, you know, being able to train people. I mean, Lockheed was using HoloLens headsets several years ago to train people on how to build their, you know, some of their very, very expensive, you know, in clean environment aerospace products. And so that's like, if you put the screw in the wrong place, like that's an $80,000 or maybe $800,000, $1 million, you know, misplacement of that screw because you have to take the whole panel out or something. So it's all those things where for manufacturing and for all these use cases, augmented reality, virtual reality have a huge advantage. So you're right. Construction is one of them.
Got it. Todd, you were going to ask something, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of like your renderings to a whole nother level. It's just, it allows you to, the example of putting the screw in the wrong place is a perfect example, because if you build a building and you decide you don't want the door there, or you do want a door there, it's really expensive to move that door after the building's been built. So, you know, you can experience that through a 2D, just flat floor plan and try to think about standing in the space. Then there's renderings and you can visualize what a finished space is. And then this just seems like it's the next step of actually being in the space prior to it being built.
Exactly. And so I think of it as a way to prevent really expensive mistakes. Mm-hmm. And so that's always a little bit difficult to sort of see, well, what's the ROI on that if somebody has a virtual showroom? You know, but I think developers do use them, and I don't have specific stats right now on, you know, what the percentages of people that are using them, but I know that it is becoming more common, and I feel like it will be, you know, it will continue to become something that is normalized with, you know, over the next few years, because people are becoming more familiar. I mean, they say, I think it's like 38% of US households have a VR device right now, and that's probably either going to be a Quest or a PSVR, or maybe Google Cardboard. So it's like, or they've at least tried it. And so it's huge. And I know that Quest 2 announced numbers, and these are pre-Christmas, pre-holiday numbers, but they already had sold over 15 million of the Quest 2s. And so the majority right now, I mean, 80% or so is going to be gaming use cases, but you look at gaming to see, and you look at the game engines to see what can be used for real estate. How can this be applied to our industry? And right now we've had a bit of a VR winter, you know, like 2017, 2018, 2019, it was a little slow, and it kind of, you know, there was definitely like, you know, a peak and a valley, but I do think that every time there's a new innovation, we will see the growth come back, and it's always higher than it was before. But the metaverse, no, we could talk about that now for sure, but you know, the metaverse, the backlash on the metaverse and the expectations from Facebook and Meta that this is going to be like an immediate overnight success is certainly, I would say, you know, forward thinking and optimistic. And, you know, everybody thinks it's just going to be like Rome built in a day, but it takes decades. And I know people in the industry who've been doing this for over 30 years. And, so, you know, they've been through these cycles before.
Sure.
Yeah. You had a fabulous graph in your, sorry, Craig, but I think you had a fabulous graph that really helped me. And I looked at it and I went, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Can you just explain kind of the adoption? You have early onset and then it goes down, but that's kind of can you just explain that graph to our listeners? And that's kind of how anything's adopted, really.
Was it the S-curve graph?
It was the S-curve. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So the S-curve graph, there were two of them. I showed them back to back. And when the PMRE archives are launched from this year, I will be able to point people in the direction of the talk, and they'll be able to see these. I can't share the graphics yet, but you know, check the website and check back to see if those are launched. But the S-curve is really interesting because it's sort of this like, you know, it follows this thing, which is the Gartner hype cycle. I don't know if you've heard about this, but the idea is this. It's like, as something is hyped up, everybody has these inflated expectations, and then, you know, they don't meet expectations, and then they sink down, and then it starts to come up again. But it's at the point where maybe it's more normal, it's more, you know, familiar to you, but it's no longer in like hype. It's just sort of in growth phase, but that phase takes a lot longer than people expect. Like if you were to look at the 2022 hype cycle graph, you would see metaverse like crashing down. Like at the beginning of the year, you would see it on the way up, then you see it crashing down, right? And so if you look back at like the 1997 Gartner technology hype cycle graph, it was the same thing. It was like virtual reality and then down. But in the meantime, you know, what happens is that for any of these singular technologies, like, so let's go to, you know, so that, let me back up. So that is sort of the way that these curves come and go. And the first graph that I showed was talking about mainframe computing, right? So like, in the age of computing, mainframe computing, like room size computers, where the very first pixel, you know, came out of a scan from a giant computer, you know, in what was it like? It was like 1957, right? So it was so long ago, and that was then, of course, replaced by a computer or the GUI, the graphical user interface, right? So we moved from mainframe computing into graphical user interface, like a mouse and all this stuff. And then as we sort of, you know, people said at that time too, like, what's the point of having a computer? Like, why do I need a personal computer? You know, so there's always this cynicism around technology, like I'll never need it. And then the next thing you know, it's everywhere. And so then the point I was making is that, look, like spatial computing or this virtual augmented reality, it is going to also follow that same curve, where right now there is cynicism, but as one type of computing starts to, like, you know, approach the end of its life cycle and new technologies come in, you know, they start to eclipse one another. And that was really what the S curve on the computing side was about, sort of, you know, the internet. But on the side of where I started talking about augmented reality, it was for sure that there's the mobile touch era, right? That we're just that we've been in for a long time. And so 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I'm sure you guys both remember getting your first tablets, your first iPads, your first any kind of touch device, right? And just think about how that changed the way that you do everything, because it makes more sense. Like, it just makes more sense. It's so easy. It's like my kids want to make, and I think Devin said this too. He's like, my kids want to have the phone and like they want to touch, they're like, why won't the photo play? Like they want everything to be interactive. And, so I think that we are certainly at this point where the internet right now is still mainly a 2D experience. But as it becomes more 3D, as it becomes more three-dimensional, then you will need new hardware to experience those things. You will need new interfaces for looking at content. And that's where the metaverse sort of comes in. It's like, oh, well, I can, the internet will become more 3D. I can, go to a web page, I can be in a location and I can access content in with that additional dimension for, being able to view something in 3D or to experiencing something in an immersive way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hope that explained it. Maybe graph was better.
That made a lot of sense. And that explained it well. So I think it's just the curve of people. There's always that adoption. Then people go, oh, this is crazy. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's everywhere.
It's going to be it's nowhere. It's completely disregarded. And then it's all at once. And, it feels like that happened when the iPhone came out. And, now, it's really like there are early adopters of this, and I would certainly consider myself an early adopter. But I think that, eventually people will want to, they will want to explore more because they're going to reach the frontier of what they can do with today's, technology, and they're going to reach for what's the next thing. And I do think that this is the thing that they will start reaching for. And it's going to take also is imagine somebody like Zillow or Redfin or any of the large marketplaces saying, we are now going to support 360, photos in our feed. And then the next thing everybody's going to be like, because they do it already on Zillow with the tours, the 3D tours. But what if they do it with photographs? What if they did it with, augmented reality and they facilitated that? I think once it gets to a tipping point where it's in something where millions of people are already going every day, then people will start to embrace it. And they'll be like, oh, I better figure this out. I mean, Matterport 7 years ago was like, zero. It was like zero. There was nobody doing Matterport and in my area. And so you look today and, it's like if people have the median price of the house is high enough, then of the virtual tours, 90% of those are Matterport tours. So, the market penetration takes a while, but we had the pandemic and that also accelerated things, but it will get here. It will get here.
Yeah. Yeah, great dive, and thank you for explaining the metaverse a little bit more to us and what we can expect for the coming future. So your presentation was two-part. You talked about the metaverse, but then you also discussed NFTs. So can we dive into that a little bit as well?
Yeah, sure. And I think that the NFTs and the blockchain technologies, any kind of future discussion or discussion about the future of the internet should include a discussion of NFTs. And the reason why it felt relevant for me was because, and I was trying to illustrate that to everybody at PMRE, was like, you are creating media, therefore your file formats, the files that you have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of right now, are all potentially mintable as NFTs, and meaning you can put that on the blockchain. You can say that it's yours. You can, have ownership of it, and then you can showcase it in a gallery, or maybe, and again, comes back to like say Zillow or Spiro. What if Spiro, what if you guys get into this? what if you, have a expansion to the way that your platform works, and you say, well, we will mint NFTs as people upload to our platform. That's the kind of stuff that I think you kind of have to imagine a future where we will want to have a digital fingerprint of our content and our media. And it's already hard for photographers. It's hard enough to prove and to show what's yours. But I think that by doing the extra step of almost this, like, internet copywriting, and that's so weird, I don't know, I just made that up, but like internet copywriting, by making something an NFT is giving it a traceable, and sort of, fingerprint, if you will, of this belongs to you. This is your copyright, or this is your material. And then you can do with it what you want. But I think it's a very interesting form of proving ownership, and then maybe even, having a future where we are paid royalties on our photography if it's used beyond just, being up for the transaction. So I think that there's a utility to it that we haven't even quite uncovered.
So let me ask a dumb question and just go back to the very basic of, what does NFT stand for? For somebody that's not familiar with this at all, what does that stand for?
So non-fungible token. And I think that is one of these sort of Latin sounding phrases that freaks everybody out. All it really means is that it's unique. It's singular. Okay. So it's not like I can't, maybe this is a good way of explaining it, is like, the way that I had it explained to me was like, I could trade you $1 for $1, right? They have equal value. My photograph that is a NFT is singular. It is unique. Okay. Therefore, I would, in order to transact with it or trade with it, like I would not be doing usually a one-to-one trade of that asset. So it really just has to do with the uniqueness of the file, and I look at it as a file. I look at it as, from our perspective, it's a photograph. Some people mint NFTs that are wave files. They are sound files. They may be a GIF. They may be a .mov. They might be, a clip of a film, and if you think about how vast that is, yeah, it's certainly overwhelming, but that's kind of why I like real estate and real estate photography as a use case for it, because I feel like it's really clear. Like, we shot this house. These are the 40 photos that we delivered for this project. This is the set. This is the collection, if you will. And other art could be, could have many, many, many iterations. But this is very clear. It's like, this is the collection. This is what it was. And so it's contained in that way.
This fascinated me as well, because I learned so much from your presentation, and you did this virtual gallery, and where you had taken a set of your images and placed it in a gallery, and then you kind of explained how that minting can happen. And I think that was very interesting. One thing that you also went into is then using AI to modify that image. Yeah. That was interesting. And then you had an AI generated wave file as a soundtrack. That's right. So that was interesting as well, because and then it's asked, okay, so whose is it at that point? And we don't need to get into a copyright thing, but I think there's just, it opened up so many things in my brain that, I never thought of that, and I probably should be thinking of that. Yeah. But anything to conclude with that set? You had this beautiful sunset on this gorgeous house, and then you used a generator to give a
AI generated.
I don't even. It's not a copy, but it's a generated. Yeah.
Right. So I was trying to illustrate how could somebody like you or me, who are just doing our daily thing, and if we needed to have a sky replacement, what I did is I took a photograph, and it was a sky that was cloudy. It was a day where, for whatever reason, the house looked awesome, but the sky didn't look great. Bay Area fog. And so I knew that it was an easy photograph to do a sky replacement on. And so I thought to myself, well, what are a couple of beautiful skies that I like? And I did Arizona, and I was using Dolly, so I was using this particular generator online that basically looks through, thousands and thousands of images, and then generates for you a set of 4 images. And you can generate off of just say, Dolly search, give me these, and you type, it's like the text to images, or you can put in an image and then have Dolly make generative images off of that first image. So it uses the image and then it kind of scrubs the image and then surfs, I guess, the web to then find similar images to bring it together, and then, runs it through its AI. So it is unique. I think of it as like image soup in a way, but it turns out okay. But with the skies, I was like, this is going to be a piece of cake. And it turned out it actually was. Like I wrote the description of the sky I wanted, and then it gave me a few skies, and then I took one and I put it in there as the sky, and it looked like a really lovely gradient sky. And it actually looked almost better. I think it actually did look better than the one that I had actually delivered to the client. So,
wow.
Yeah, so I was surprised by that, but I wanted to put this into the context of something where people would see, oh, this isn't in the future. This is something I could use now. And maybe if I had if I had a bad day and we didn't have the right sky pack or whatever you use, and you wanted to put something new in there, it's available to you. And I want people to see that there are creative ways that artificial intelligence and NFTs may provide creative outlets, because at the end of the day, like, you're not going to push yourself as a creator if you do the same thing over and over again. Everybody's going to buy something new this holiday season. They're going to buy a new camera or a lens. They're going to buy something to help them with their craft. Now, when you look at it from the editing side of things, you're always wondering, like, what can I do to make to make life easier, or to try something in a new way? And that's when I was like, oh yeah, artificial intelligence is going to absolutely upend this entire industry. It will. And there will, because then I showed an example, right, of the virtual staging that had been done by artificial intelligence. And that was what it is. So I did a virtual staging done by artificial intelligence. I made a slideshow, and I made a soundtrack out of an artificially intelligence generated song by Moobert and Oda Studio. And so with the Oda Studio and the Moobert track, it was like, it's just wizardry, but it totally worked.
Yeah.
It's amazing where technology continues to push us and lead us. And we just really enjoyed the presentation, Emily. I know you have a plane to catch, so we want to wrap things up so you can get on the road.
I'm in Berlin right now. So I'm in Berlin, Germany, and I'm on my way to Basel, Switzerland, and then to Europa Park, actually, because I'm going to be moderating an awards show for virtual, and it's basically for a virtual and augmented reality, and this is the 5th year I've done it. And so we have our 5th AREA Awards on Thursday and Friday.
That's awesome. And
it's a metaverse summit in Europe, and so I'm on my way there this week. So tonight I'm heading on the plane, but I think that it's sort of like, life is short and art is long, and so this is not something that I feel like is going to necessarily be like an overnight success. But if people want to commit to exploring it, they may find new outlets. And my hope would be that, maybe it's Spiro, maybe it's you guys. I don't know who it is. I don't know who heard me at the conference, but if it inspires somebody to, experiment and try to create something new, then I'm beyond thrilled. Then I feel like mission accomplished.
That's awesome. Our guest is Emily Olman of Hopscotch Interactive. Again, thank you for making the time for us, Emily. Yeah, you have a full schedule, and we really appreciate it. If somebody had a question, wanted to learn more just about this whole sphere, are you open to them reaching out to you? And if so, how do they do that?
So I am pretty active on my YouTube channel. So Hopscotch Interactive is our YouTube channel. We have an Instagram also at Hopscotch Interactive, and they can reach out to me. They can connect with me on LinkedIn. Also, those are great ways. They can send me an email. And if they're listening to this podcast, they should send it, just send it straight to me, Emily@hopscotchinteractive.com. And I will get back to everyone. I especially want to hear from people who are, maybe they are feeling like this is, something they have some experience with, and maybe they hit a wall, or maybe they're totally, brand new to it, and they just, they want to explore more. And if that's the case, I would also point them to the blog post that I did right after PMRE. So if you go to the hopscotchinteractive.com website and you go to our blog, then you'll see that there's a post there, and I have 7 pages of links and notes. Wow. And tons of videos. Awesome. On my YouTube channel, I have a PMRE playlist, which has over 20 videos that are talking about NFTs and real estate and, metaverse and the, 7 rules of the metaverse. And so I think if people really want to dive deep, I have tried to put it out there for them, but they can certainly reach out. Yeah.
Awesome. Todd, any final thoughts from you?
Thanks to Emily. She's such a resource, and a global resource. So we're very excited that you were on to share your knowledge today, Emily. And if you have follow-up questions, reach out to Emily, reach out to us. I think one takeaway, because my head was spinning after the presentation in a good way, but push it a little bit further. And if you can be the voice that brings something new, because I will say that our clients as real estate agents, it's a competitive industry, and they are looking for something new. I used an analogy like, what's the ace in their pocket? Will it get them a new listing? Will it win that presentation? I think it's important you take some of this in, as much as you're like, what is it? Where am I? I have to use a headset. Just put all that out of your head and just use it for good to learn, and push those ideas a little bit further, and then use that information to give it to your real estate agents. I think you can just benefit so much from that. So if your head's spinning, that would just be my one takeaway. It's just continue to learn about it, because you got to start somewhere.
Right. Emily, have a safe flight. Thanks again so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure. I hope I can come on the show again at some point, and, we can chat again. You guys are awesome. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Hey, pleasure is ours. And if you're watching the podcast, don't forget, you can also listen to it. You can go to spiromedia.podbean.com. You can catch us on all the major audio podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, all of those. And be sure to share this, like it. It just helps get the content to more people that are really looking to build their business and learn more about how to run a real estate media business. So liking, subscribing, sharing, we appreciate all that. And it's going to help our industry as a whole. Finally, we just want to thank you for taking a few minutes. Well, okay, maybe more than just a few minutes, but to watch and to listen, to engage. Leave a comment. If you've got thoughts, experiences with the metaverse or NFTs, we'd love to hear from you. So leave a comment on the YouTube channel. And again, you can email us at hello@spiro.media. We absolutely would love to hear from you. So until next week, just be thankful for what you have and take a breath. Have a great week.
Thank you for joining us for the Spiro Podcast, Managing Your Real Estate Photography and Videography Business. This is a production of Spiro and Wow Video Tours. You can find out more about Spiro's real estate media business management software at our website, spiro.media.